Hello and welcome to our podcast episode number 42, Secrets, Lies, and Monsters in a 19th Century Community. I am Timothy and I am here with my dear friend Thomas. Today, we are going to talk about a film called The Village. Be aware, spoilers ahead. The Village is a 2004 period thriller film set in 19th century Pennsylvania, where a remote village lives in fear of creatures inhabiting the surrounding woods after a young villager's death and subsequent skinned animal carcasses appearing. They discover the truth about their elders' deception to perpetuate the legend of monsters living outside their protected village borders. Well, Tom, so did you enjoy The Village?
Oh, Tim, it's always so lovely seeing you again. I have to admit that I quite enjoyed The Village. It was definitely a thrilling watch from beginning to end. As for initial thoughts, I found myself captivated by the eerie atmosphere Night Shyamalan managed to create in this film. The color palette he chose perfectly reflects the mood of fear and suspense that permeates throughout the story.
Well, thank you, Thomas, for your kind words about my old friend M. Night Shyamalan.
I have to say that while I found some parts of The Village quite interesting,
Overall, it wasn't really my cup of tea. It was too dark and depressing for my taste, if you ask me. And I must admit that I found the twist at the end rather disappointing.
Oh, come on now, Timothy. You can't deny the power of a good twist. While some may have seen it coming, others were genuinely surprised by the revelation about their village and its elders. And I think that's what makes Shyamalan such an intriguing filmmaker. He knows how to keep his audience guessing until the very end.
Well, maybe so, Tom. But let me tell you this. I couldn't help but feel that The Village was trying too hard to be clever and twisted when it could have just been a simple, straightforward thriller. And as for the elders' deception, it felt more like a cop-out than an actual twist, if you ask me.
But enough about my grumblings. Tell me, what did you think of the characters in this film?
Well, Tim, I have to say that I found some of the characterizations quite compelling. I especially enjoyed the portrayal of Lucius by Joaquin Phoenix. He brought a sense of vulnerability and determination to his role, which made him quite endearing. As for the elders, they were quite chilling in their deception. It was fascinating to see how far they were willing to go to maintain their power over the village.
Well, I agree that Joaquin Phoenix did an excellent job with his role as Lucius, but I found some of the other characters rather one-dimensional and hard to connect with. For instance, I didn't quite understand why Ivy fell in love with Lucius so easily or how she managed to survive in the woods on her own after being left by her fellow villagers. And don't even get me started on that creature reveal. It was ridiculous.
Now, Tim, you know I always enjoy our lively debates about films and their characters, but let's not forget that this is a work of fiction. Sometimes we have to suspend our disbelief and just go with the flow. As for the creature reveal, I found it quite shocking and effective in terms of delivering the twist. It showed how far the elders were willing to go to maintain their lie about the monsters living outside their village borders.
Well, Tom, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on this one. But moving along, let's talk about the overall plot of The Village and how it manages to keep its viewers engaged throughout. As mentioned earlier, the film is set in 19th century Pennsylvania, where a remote village lived in fear of monstrous creatures inhabiting the surrounding woods. This constant state of anxiety creates an oppressive atmosphere that permeates every aspect of villagers' lives. The plot thickens when Lucius Hunt, played by Joaquin Phoenix, ventures into the forbidden forest in search of medical supplies for his ailing friend. His actions lead to a series of events that unravel the Elder's dark secret about their connection to these creatures and force them to confront the harsh realities they've been hiding from their community for decades.
I couldn't agree more, Tim. The Village does an excellent job at maintaining tension throughout its runtime. The cinematography is also quite striking. With its use of shadows and dark colors, it effectively conveys the ominous atmosphere that permeates the village. Additionally, M. Night Shyamalan's direction is top-notch. As always, he knows how to draw out suspenseful moments and keep audiences on the edge of their seats.
Well, Thomas, I have to say that while I appreciated some aspects of the film's visual style and atmosphere, it didn't quite make up for what I found to be a rather flawed narrative of overall. For instance, there were certain plot points, like the character of Noah Percy, that felt underdeveloped and ultimately unnecessary to the story. Furthermore, I couldn't help but feel that the film relied too heavily on its twist ending instead of focusing on more nuanced elements of character development and thematic exploration.
Now, Tim, you know I respect your opinion about The Village and its narrative structure, but let's not forget that this is a thriller film. It's supposed to keep us guessing and leave us with unexpected twists and turns. As for character development and thematic exploration, I believe they were present throughout the story through characters like Lucius and Ivy, who challenged the elders' authority and sought to uncover their village's dark secret.
Tom, while I can appreciate your perspective on the matter, it doesn't change my personal feelings towards the village. But before we continue debating its merits or flaws any further, let me ask you this. What did you think of M. Night Shyamalan's direction and his use of themes in this film?
I found M. Night Shyamalan's direction to be quite effective in creating an eerie atmosphere and maintaining tension throughout the movie. As for his use of themes, he explores some interesting ideas such as conformity versus individuality, the consequences of isolationism, and the nature of truth and deception within society. While these themes might not have been executed to everyone's satisfaction, I believe they add depth to the narrative and make The Village a more thought-provoking film than it may initially seem.
Well, Tom, while I can appreciate your insights into Night Shyamalan's direction and thematic choices in The Village, I still maintain that this particular film didn't quite work for me on a personal level. But let's not dwell on my negativity any longer. We should move on to discussing our next movie pick for the podcast. How about we watch Signs?
Well, Tim, I must admit that Signs is one of my all-time favorites among Night Shyamalan's films. But let me share some interesting trivia about The Village with our audience before we move on to discussing it. Did you know that the role of Lucius Hunt was initially offered to Edward Norton, but he turned it down due to scheduling conflicts? Joaquin Phoenix eventually stepped in and delivered a powerful performance as Lucius. Additionally, some of the film's visual effects were achieved using practical methods such as creating giant animal costumes instead of relying solely on computer-generated imagery. This unique approach adds an extra layer of authenticity to the movie's eerie atmosphere.
That is quite interesting, Tom. I must admit that Joaquin Phoenix was excellent in his role as Lucius. And it's always fascinating to learn about the behind-the-scenes stories and creative decisions made during film production. But back to Signs. As we mentioned earlier, it seems like Night Shyamalan has a knack for exploring themes such as conformity versus individuality and the consequences of isolationism in his films. In what ways do you think these themes are further developed or expanded upon in Signs?
Well, Tim, Signs continues to explore some of the themes introduced in The Village, but it also adds new layers to Night Shyamalan's filmography. In this film, we see the theme of faith and spirituality playing a significant role in shaping the characters' actions and decisions. The protagonist, Graham Hess, played by Mel Gibson, is a former minister who has lost his faith due to personal tragedy. However, as the story unfolds and strange occurrences begin happening around him, he finds himself questioning his beliefs once again. Additionally, Signs also delves into the idea of self-discovery and overcoming fear through unity. The characters are forced to confront their individual doubts and prejudices in order to come together as a community when faced with an extraterrestrial threat. This theme is particularly relevant today, given our current social climate, where divisiveness and mistrust seem to be at an all-time high.
Well, Tom, your insights into Signs are quite thought-provoking, and I must admit that it's one of my favorites among Night Shyamalan's films as well. But before we move on to discussing the next movie on our list, let me just say that I appreciate how you managed to find some redeeming qualities in The Village, despite our differences of opinion about it. It really shows your ability to think critically and empathize with others' perspectives. Thank you for another engaging podcast session.
Well, Tim, thank you for your kind words. And speaking of The Village, let's talk about some of its technical aspects, such as special effects and filming techniques. One thing that really stands out in this film is the use of color to create a sense of unease and isolation. The predominantly muted colors like browns, greens, and grays contribute to an overall dreary atmosphere that mirrors the village's state of fear and confusion. Another interesting aspect of the film's visual style is its use of wide-angle lenses and shallow depth of field. This technique creates a sense of claustrophobia by emphasizing the closeness of characters to each other in tense scenes, while also blurring out their surroundings, which contributes to the feeling that they are trapped within this oppressive world. Additionally, The Village showcases some impressive practical effects for its time, particularly during scenes involving the creatures living outside the village borders. While we don't get to see these creatures in their entirety until later in the film, their presence is felt throughout thanks to well-executed sound design and subtle glimpses of them in the shadows or moving through the woods. This approach adds an extra layer of realism and suspense that helps drive home the sense of danger and unease experienced by the characters on screen.
That's a great point, Tom. The use of practical effects and sound design really adds to the overall creepy atmosphere in The Village. And speaking of which, I found it quite fascinating how Night Shyamalan managed to create such tension without relying too heavily on jump scares or overly graphic violence. Instead, he utilizes a slow buildup of suspense and an underlying sense of unease that keeps you on the edge of your seat throughout the film. Another aspect I appreciated about The Village was its use of unconventional camera angles and shot compositions. For example, there's a scene where Lucius is exploring the forest at night, and we see him from an unusual low angle that makes him appear small and vulnerable in comparison to the towering trees surrounding him. This type of imagery effectively conveys his sense of isolation and disorientation within this unfamiliar environment. Overall, The Village is a technically impressive film that showcases Night Shyamalan's unique directorial style and his ability to create an engaging narrative using subtle techniques rather than relying heavily on traditional horror tropes or special effects gimmicks.
That's a great point, Tim. I also want to touch upon the performances of the cast members in The Village. Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal of Lucius Hunt is truly captivating. He conveys a sense of simmering intensity that gradually escalates throughout the film as he uncovers more about his village's dark secrets. It's fascinating to watch him navigate between his character's desire for truth and acceptance of the status quo. Another standout performance comes from Sigourney Weaver as Alice Hunt, Lucius's mother. Her portrayal of a strong-willed matriarch who will stop at nothing to protect her family is both chilling and emotionally resonant. The chemistry between Phoenix and Weaver adds an extra layer of complexity to their characters' relationship, which plays a crucial role in driving the narrative forward.
Indeed, I agree with you completely about Joaquin Phoenix's performance as Lucius Hunt. He truly captures the essence of a man torn between his desire for truth and his loyalty to his family. And Sigourney Weaver is indeed fantastic in her role as Alice Hunt, showcasing her ability to portray both strength and vulnerability within the same character. The rest of the cast also delivers strong performances. Adrian Brody brings an understated intensity to his role as Noah Percy, while William Hurt effectively conveys the sense of despair and hopelessness experienced by the village's elders. Even the minor characters like Brendan Gleeson's portrayal of the town drunkard contribute meaningfully to the overall atmosphere of dread and unease that pervades the village.
I couldn't agree more, Tim. The ensemble cast really brings it. Night Shyamalan's vision for this film to life in a way that is both haunting and thought-provoking. It's fascinating how each character embodies different aspects of the village's collective psyche. They represent both the fears that hold them captive and the potential for change that lies within them. As viewers, we are forced to grapple with our own perceptions and preconceived notions about these characters as their true natures unfold before us throughout the course of the film. This layered approach to storytelling is a testament to Night Shyamalan's skill as both a writer and director, and it serves as an excellent example of how effective filmmaking can be when all elements from acting, performances to cinematography and sound design are working harmoniously towards a common goal.
Well, Tom, it's clear that The Village is a film that has had a significant impact on both popular culture and the horror genre as a whole. Its themes of conformity, isolationism, and the dangers of blindly following authority figures continue to resonate with audiences even today. Additionally, Night Shyamalan's distinctive directorial style has left an indelible mark on the industry, inspiring countless filmmakers and influencing the way horror films are made and received.
Indeed. The Village has become something of a cult classic over the years, with fans analyzing its themes and debating its merits endlessly. Some critics argue that the film's twist ending is indicative of a larger cultural trend towards cynicism or distrust in institutions. Others see it as a commentary on the dangers of ignorance and how embracing the unknown can lead to personal growth and transformation. Regardless of one's interpretation, there's no denying that The Village has sparked important conversations about society, identity, and the nature of reality itself.
That's a fascinating perspective, Tom. I hadn't really considered how The Village could be seen as a commentary on larger cultural trends. It just goes to show how rich and complex this film truly is. And speaking of complexity, let's not forget about the film's soundtrack, which plays an important role in setting the eerie atmosphere for much of the movie. Composer James Newton Howard effectively uses strings, brass, and percussion instruments to create a sense of unease that mirrors the characters' emotional states. From the haunting melodies that accompany scenes involving the creatures outside the village to the dissonant chords that signify moments of conflict or tension within the community, the soundtrack is an integral part of The Village's overall success as a horror film.
I couldn't agree more, Tim. James Newton Howard's score for The Village is truly haunting and effective in amplifying the film's themes and mood. His use of music to create tension and suspense adds an extra layer of depth to the viewing experience, making it all the more immersive for audiences. And speaking of immersion, let's not overlook the impact that The Village has had on the world of horror gaming. Many fans have cited similarities between elements from this film and popular survival horror video games like Outlast or Amnesia: The Dark Descent. These comparisons highlight how influential M. Night Shyamalan's work has been across different media formats, further solidifying his place in pop culture history.
That's a great point, Tom. It just goes to show that the impact of The Village extends far beyond its initial release and continues to resonate with audiences through various forms of media. And speaking of resonating with audiences, let's not forget about the film's performances, which have garnered critical acclaim over the years. Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal of Lucius Hunt has been praised for its nuance and complexity, while Sigourney Weaver's performance as Alice Hunt is chillingly effective in conveying her character's ruthless determination to protect her family at all costs. The rest of the cast also delivers strong performances that contribute significantly to the overall atmosphere of dread and unease that pervades The Village.
That's indeed true, Tim. The Village is a testament to the power of great storytelling across multiple mediums, from its gripping narrative to its haunting soundtrack and viscerating visual effects. Its cultural impact is undeniable, inspiring countless filmmakers and influence cinema their own rights use. It's a film that will remain in the public conscience for years to come.
Well, Tom, as we wrap up our discussion about The Village, it's clear that this film is an ambitious and thought-provoking work of art. It raises important questions about conformity, isolationism, and the dangers of blindly following authority figures, while also providing a chilling commentary on the power of ignorance and fear. The performances by Joaquin Phoenix, Sigourney Weaver, and the rest of the talented cast are nothing short of exceptional, adding depth and nuance to their characters' complex emotional arcs. And let's not forget about Night Shyamalan's masterful direction, which effectively blends tension, suspense, and horror with a dash of social commentary.
Absolutely. It's films like The Village that remind us why we love cinema in the first place. They have the power to challenge our perceptions, spark important conversations, and leave a lasting impact on our lives. And while some might argue about the film's twist ending or perceived flaws, I believe that these discussions are just as important as appreciating its strengths. After all, art is meant to be interpreted differently by each individual who experiences it.
Well said, Tom. So before we wrap up this podcast episode, let's not forget to remind our viewers to comment below with their thoughts on The Village and share this video with their friends. And remember to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth discussions about your favorite films, as well as new releases that are sure to spark debate and conversation. Until next time, this has been Timothy and Thomas, and we hope you enjoyed our discussion